Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rosa B. I'm a creative career coach at Evenbreak. So I want to welcome you here all today for the webinar Discussing Disability Positively. I think this is going to be a very lively webinar today. But before we get started, I just want to introduce you to a few people. First of all, we have our executive producer, contributor, and co-host, Toby S. Toby, hi, how are you today?
I'm doing okay, Rosa. Thank you.
Fabulous. You looking forward to the webinar?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a very full on, very interactive, very looking forward to it.
What I'd like to do is also introduce everyone to our fabulous Claire and Carol. They are our BSL interpreter and and are also doing the captions. So welcome to you both today. Thank you for joining us. Just want to make sure that the captions are active and that everyone can see the captions. We all good to go? Okay, so this is one in a series of career webinars for our Hive, which is a 24/7 website that's stacked full of fabulous resources, articles, tools, and guides. It's being designed and co-produced by our fabulous Amy, Tammy, and Caroline, who are also career coaches here at Evenbreak. Just wanted to let you all know that this is actually going to be a 40-minute webinar followed by a 10-minute Q&A. The webinar is recorded, but you won't be. However, we will be opening the chat box and also the mic so that you can be actively involved, because we do love to hear your stories, don't we, Toby?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we just move on to the next slide? Okay, so what are we going to learn today? Well, you know what, folks, I think that we're going to learn a lot more from each other and from the stories and the experiences that we share here today, especially on this particular webinar. But we're going to cover a couple of things. Should or shouldn't you? Whether to disclose your disability. I know that you've all thought about that, right? How to discuss your disability with an employer or indeed a recruiter. What's the approach, or what is the pitch that you take? I just wanted to share something with you. You know, the way that we talk about disability and the language that we use, and this includes our self-speak, right? The way that we talk to ourselves, our internal dialogue and internal monologue, can make a big difference in either impressing and impacting upon an employer or turning them and a recruiter off, right? So if we think about it, words really do matter. The words we use to describe anything seeps into not just our conscious, but our unconscious. It informs our feelings and our thoughts. And guess what? Our thoughts inform our actions. What do you guys think about this? Often much about what prevents a business from engaging with this is because of their lack of confidence around their use of language, not to mention their actions. But to an onlooker, language surrounding disability can become complicated and inflammatory, right? So often it's easy to really avoid the conversation. But guess what? You and I can actually change that by becoming advocates, because we all have a voice. And we're going to talk to this a little bit more in this webinar a little bit later. So the words and the language that we use really is important. But we're also going to look at what do you need to thrive in the world of work. This is about understanding what adjustments you need and how to assert yourself and be able to ask for those adjustments. But we're also going to share and learn from each other through our own lived experiences, because that's really what connects us all here today. So let's go, Toby, to our next slide. So I did mention that we would really love for you to share your stories with us all today. Toby, I know that you're going to open up the mic, right? But
Yes.
if anyone wants to, you can also use the chat box. So here's some insightful questions I wanted to ask you all, because I know you've got stories and I know you want to share them. Would or have you discussed your disability with an employer or a recruiter, and why? When did you discuss your disability? Was it before you got the job, or was it in the interview, or was it after you got the job? Maybe you've never discussed it and you have no desire to do so, and that's perfectly fine. But what approach did you take if you did? And how did you tell that story? What was the result, and was it successful? So we're opening it up. Toby, let's see. What's everyone saying? But before we do that, do you want to share a little bit about your lived experience, Toby?
Yeah, of course. So I'm quite new to like the career world, and probably my first job I ever applied for was this receptionist at a hotel. So I sent off that application. I didn't tell them that I was disabled, just because I wanted them to judge me on my experience and my qualifications, and rather, it's difficult, wasn't it? But then I finally got given an interview, which was really exciting. And I have a physical disability. So I come marching into this interview, with my crutches, and they obviously saw that I was disabled. And did we really discuss it? No, but I went through it. I sold myself, all my key skills and qualifications. And a few days later, I got the job, which was amazing. So I felt like, my disability wasn't a big issue. And yeah, so for me, it was a very positive experience.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have anybody else who wants to share their story? If we open up the mic, or if you want to just, raise your emoji hand if you do want to speak, or alternatively, I think there may be some chatter going on in the chat box. Is there, Toby?
Yeah, so a few people are chatting. So one person says, no, I haven't discussed with my previous employer, as I acknowledge my disability more recently.
So, okay, so they've just recently been diagnosed, or they've just realized that they have an impairment or health condition, whatever. That's interesting.
Definitely.
Because I can relate to that, because mine is actually very recent too. Just slightly over a year ago, I got the results back that I had, that I have ADHD, which I'm happy to discuss with everyone here, by the way. But, I remember thinking about applying for a job, and there was that, are you disabled, that came up, flashed up over that application form. It filled me with terror, I have to say. I was having all sorts of feelings, guilty feelings, maybe a little bit of an imposter syndrome. Should or shouldn't I? I felt guilty if I did, guilty if I didn't. It really opened a storm field for me, So we understand each other's stories. And, I totally understand that this is a recent thing for you, and so you want to take your time, and we hope that maybe some of the tips or some of other people's stories here in today's webinar will be able to help you. Does anybody else want to share?
We have some people who raised their hands, so I'm going to try if we can put them on mic. So Rachel, I see you've raised your hand, so I'm allowing you to talk. You will just have to unmute yourself. Hopefully there is a notification on your screen saying you can unmute yourself.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Rachel. Can you hear us?
I think Rachel needs to unmute. While she's figuring that out, do we have anyone else or anything else in the box?
Yes. So someone says hidden disabilities are hard sometimes, which is I completely understand.
Absolutely, and we do talk to this a little bit later. Toby, you walked into your interview, right, with your crutches. It was obvious.
Yeah, it's definitely, I have a physical disability. I'm proud about my disability, and if they weren't comfortable with my disability, frankly, I wouldn't want to work in a company that made me feel uncomfortable about something that I had no control in doing. So yeah, I was very fortunate that they were very supportive in that part.
Because I think that some people do feel, well, it's there, it's obvious now. So let's just talk about the elephant in inverted commas in the room. But exactly, what if you've got a non-visible disability? What do you do there? And some extra thought and consideration really needs to go into that. I understand it. I have dyslexia and ADHD, so I understand. But what if you have both? What if you have a visible and a non-visible disability? How are you going to approach that? So we do try to talk to these in a couple of slides further down. Shall we move on, or does anyone else want to have an opportunity to say anything or to add a comment in the chat box?
Rachel, we have unmuted you, but sometimes tech things these just don't work out, but we're happy to move on if that's okay.
Okay. Sorry about that, Rachel. Maybe we'll try and pick that up a little bit later throughout the webinar. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Right, so slide 1, this is before you make the big decision, should or shouldn't I? Well, first of all, we all know, right, that there's absolutely no obligation. You don't have to, this is a personal choice, right? Perhaps it has no effect on your ability to do the job, so it's not, doesn't even need to be on the table for a discussion. That's absolutely fine. But if you have decided, or you're thinking, I need to, or I want to at this point, why are you discussing your disability? What is your end goal? What do you hope to achieve? What's the outcome you're looking for? So these are all questions you might want to consider or ponder before you go there. It's okay if you do, and it's okay if you don't. Know that we are protected by the Equalities Act of 2010. It's there to protect and also to assist us. However, it is dependent on you actually discussing your disability, your impairment, or your condition with the employer, right? So we know that the decision will be different for everyone. Again, having a visible and a non-visible disability is going to have different impacts, and it means that you're going to have to think about this a little more strategically when you are deciding whether you want to discuss your disability, and we totally understand that. Here's some tips though. You might want to consider each employer and the job individually and on its own merits. What is that employer saying about inclusion and diversity? Words matter, but so do actions. So what are they doing? How are they framing this? How are they discussing this across their social media, in their job ads? So you really want to take a close look at that. Also, you want to look at the individual job and what is the expectation of the role, and how does that impact upon your personal circumstances? So it is really important to take a good look at that job description, responsibilities, and the tasks within it. Okay, so it's equally just as important to know where to go and seek out support. So we need to learn and know and understand, well, what is the Equalities Act? What does it actually cover? How does it cover and support us? Where do we go if we want to seek support? Did you know about Access to Work, that it's there to help support you thrive in the world of work? If you don't, check out Access to Work. We have actually just done a seminar a few weeks ago. Our fabulous Jane Hatton actually spoke to somebody from Access to Work who gave a fabulous overview on what supports are available and what actually Access to Work is. So I highly recommend that you check that out on our Hive site, and it will be loaded in the next few days. But I want you all to think about the consequences of not disclosing. There's a lot of power in discussing and disclosing your disability to an employer or a recruiter. If the employer is not aware, they can't make adjustments, right? We don't know what we don't know. What if your disability comes up in the future, in your future job, and you haven't yet discussed it? How are you going to manage, cope, and deal with that? So these are all, I suppose, things that we need to think about right before we start making those decisions. Has anybody got any comments, or anybody want to come in and have a quick chat?
In the chat box, some people are chatting. So I think Toby made a good point about not wanting to work for a company that didn't accept him as he is, which is a good argument for telling them if it isn't obvious.
Fantastic.
We have another question. I have a disability in my right hand, which can be dealt with, but I also have functional dysphonia, which affects my voice, and was told to use an amplifier by my speech therapist when I had a lost voice, hoarse, deep, soft voice whilst working. I used this, but colleagues laughed, and I had to leave as I was bullied and harassed through. How would you approach this?
Okay, That's fundamentally, well, we've got to call out bullying, right? We've got to be able to stand up and be our own advocate. I'm wondering what that individual did on this occasion. Did you stand up? Did you go and seek out your manager and have that discussion? Did you speak with HR? Because really, that's not acceptable. You're actually putting in place an adjustment for yourself in order to thrive in the world of work. And when you do that, your colleagues should be supportive. They shouldn't bully. So it's really, really important that we also seek out support from those that are in leadership positions, those that are in HR, that can actually help us and support us. This kind of lends itself to all that disability awareness talks that businesses and organizations may need to have with all of their employees, because we're all learning, we're all on a journey, aren't we? Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm sure that must have been really quite a traumatic experience for you, and we really do appreciate you sharing this story with us. We hope that that's helped. Anyone else got anything else they would like to say on this particular slide, or any other comments?
Job descriptions not always reflect the actual job.
Great answer. So perhaps one thing that we can do is make sure that, is this the most recent, current and up-to-date job description? Often jobs change. Have those job descriptions moved along with the times? That's an excellent question. It's fantastic. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what to discuss? Right, you've made the decision. You're gonna go there. You're gonna discuss your disability, your impairment, or your condition, right? So here's just some general tips. And I've kind of framed them, I've linked them in three separate things. First of all, you'd want to discuss your disability and the needs to know. We don't need to share our innards or everything. You want to give general information, but you want to provide details and information about your disability as it applies to that opportunity or that role only. Okay. Secondly, you want to be really effective in the way you discuss or disclose your disability. Why don't we take control of the situation and actually provide practical examples and suggestions? And this is a really, really, really powerful way to demonstrate you've got no issue, you've got no problem, because here's how you've put or implemented examples or solutions. So you want to be solutions focused, you want to be a problem solver, you actually want to support and educate and help your employer understand your disability, but also provide examples and solutions. You might want to address how you plan to accomplish tasks required for the job. You can do this right in the middle of your interview. That's a really, really, really powerful strategy to use, because what you're doing is you are demonstrating, I can do the job, I'm a premium candidate, and here's how I can do it. And of course, you want to think about the types of adjustments that have worked for you in the past. Perhaps you've had adjustments in past jobs. How has that worked for you? Are there any new adjustments that you might need? Especially if you're anticipating applying for a new job where the responsibilities and the tasks might be slightly different. It may mean some changes, some additions, potentially. So these are just sort of some tips or ideas for you to think about. Okay, Toby, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so words matter, language matters, right? We talked earlier about, the language that we use. And I'm talking about everyone here, not just ourselves, but don't we have a responsibility for our own self-speak, the way we talk to ourselves? So we have to start there first, really, don't we? You want to avoid negative language or language that lacks agency. How many of us have come across inspiration porn? Anyone ever been treated as a little bit of titillation or inspiration porn? Toby, have you had any experiences?
Oh yeah, all the time. So I live in the Lake District and I do enjoy going out and walking in the fields. But the times I've met so many people and they're so patronizing, they're like, oh, is this your first walk? Or well done you must be so proud. And I don't know, it gets frustrating, but I get so used to having these patronizing comments that it doesn't really affect me that much. But yeah, I get loads at sometimes.
I
What
got
about
you.
you, Rosa?
Well, you know, having a disability, you know, some people see it as inherently a tragic fate. Oh, poor you. And somehow our ordinary life experience to some people is actually an extraordinary gift. And you're right, it is a little patronizing. Some stories might paint disability as an obstacle to overcome, you know, for example, being able to run a marathon, or, you know, I mean, it's really, really interesting. It's because obviously if you don't have a lived experience, or you don't have a loved one or someone close to you, you just may not understand it. And it's really important to educate ourselves, but also we have a responsibility to educate others as well. And we can do it in, you know, in the language that we use, but also the actions that we take ourselves. So just be mindful of the inspiration porn and how it can perpetuate really damaging stigma or stereotypes. And so, you know, we can create the real story. We can present the real story of who we are and just be our authentic selves. So you can create your own narrative, and you want to come from a position of strength. You want to take control of your story and your situation, and you want to be able to use that across your job search journey. You can do it where you feel most comfortable. Covering letter doesn't have to be. You can do it before your interview, during your interview, or maybe as you're starting in your role. It's really up to you, because at the end of the day, you make that decision. But you can step into your power and take control of your own story and situation. And in a way, Toby, right, we've kind of got to do it. We've got to be our own self-advocate. So you want to ask yourself, does my story fit in, and is it relevant to what's required in the job? Because otherwise, why am I sharing this, right? If you haven't already, watch this fabulous, fabulous video by the wonderful Stella Young. It's a seminal TED Talk on disability language, and you can follow some of her tips. It is really, really a very, very powerful piece, and she brings it across in such a magical and funny way. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So, how to discuss? We're talking here now about the positive mindset, okay? We're talking about your internal dialogue, how you speak to yourself about your own disability, your talents, and your strengths. Here's some general tips. We know we've got to stay positive, right? I'm not telling you here how to suck eggs, but it's really important to constantly be sitting in that positive mindset. Always stay focused on your talents and your strengths, no matter what, throughout your job search journey. First of all, as you start your job search journey and you're looking for jobs, you want to be in a really positive mindset where you're looking at, how can I do the job? You want to be looking at your talents and your strengths. You don't want to be thinking, can I, should I, would I? But you want to come at it from a position of strength. So always look at it thinking, these are the talents and the strengths that I have. Here's how I will be able to do this job. Don't forget that you're a premium candidate, not in spite of, but because of your disability, right? We did a powerful webinar a couple of weeks ago where we actually talked to this, and we focused a lot on the unique talents and strengths that you've probably developed, not in spite of, but actually because of your disability. Your ability to problem solve, project manage, your ability to use your creativity skills. We all have them. Be mindful about how you want to share your creativity skills, your ability to problem solve. You can use your disability to demonstrate how you use those skills. But again, you want to make it relevant, right, Toby? You want to make it relevant to the job you're applying for. What about your transferable skills? Do you know what they are? Have you ever looked at a job and thought, no, I can't do that? But have you really looked at the opportunity and thought, well, actually, I have all these skills and talents from previous opportunities, from my volunteering, from my lived experience. I've actually got the skills. If you want support in identifying what your transferable skills are, please reach out and speak to either myself, Amy, Tammy, or Caroline. Would be more than happy to help you here. Don't forget, you've got lots of other traits that make you desirable. Again, it comes back to that whole notion that you are a premium candidate. In fact, we would argue here at Evenbreak that you're even more so a premium candidate. Okay, so acknowledge how you've overcome a challenge. We're not talking about the inspiration porn here, but we're talking about your determination, your resilience, your ability to use your grit and your maturity. Always make it relevant to the job that you're applying for. I know I've said that about 2 times now. Sorry, I do have a tendency to repeat myself. My short-term memory is not as good as my long-term memory. Or is it the other way around? Anyway, if you haven't already, why not check out what makes you a premium candidate? There is a wonderful blog article, and there is also a webinar that we've created and some articles. So please do check out the Hive. I just want to pause here and see if anyone wants to have a chat or if we've got anything coming up in the chat box, Toby.
Okay, so someone has said, I do not add my disability in my CV, though some of my experience within the sight loss community may highlight that I have special connection or interest in this area. Use it to demonstrate the experience and skills gained volunteering or working within each organization.
Okay, what are your thoughts on that, Toby?
Gosh, it's a lot. I don't know. I think if you definitely use your experience to really show off your skills to your employers, because we all, everyone who has disability or hidden disability has lived experience that employers are really looking for, determination, planning, organization, team working, these skills that we live with on a daily basis are crucial, isn't it, Rita?
Absolutely. And you know what? By demonstrating that, you're probably breaking down some stereotypes. That person sitting opposite you might be thinking, wow. And it can be very, very, very powerful. But again, it just comes down to how you want to bring that across, how you approach it and how you articulate it. We're going to move on to the next slide, Toby. Oh, when do we discuss? Okay, so when are you going to discuss application stage? Well, we know that there can be some direct questions like, do you have a disability? And sometimes there's no other nuance around it, and it can be very confronting. And then maybe you feel cornered. Oh, I feel I have to. If I'm not, I'm a little bit of an imposter. Does that come up for anyone? There may be some applications where you do actually have to fill out a medical questionnaire, depending on the type of role that it is, maybe some teaching roles or some health professional opportunities. So just be mindful of that. It's really around fit to practice. And so you just want to be aware that that will come up. However, we turn it into a positive. It's an opportunity for you to provide clear, structured, concise information, but just know that you'll have to be honest and upfront at that point. What about prior to interview? Maybe you need some adjustments. It will be easier for the employer to support you if they're notified in advance, and it demonstrates that you're self-managed and proactive. What about during the interview? Some people may want to address their disability in person rather than in writing. It could mean that the employer, though, focuses on your disability. So just be mindful how you approach it, right? Let's go to the next slide, Toby. What about you want to wait until you've started in the job? You want to sort of settle in, get a sense of the role that you're in, the culture, the people that you're working with. So the new team may be unsure how to engage with your disability, never mind disability in general, right? So how might this affect your working environment? You want to think about that. If you feel confident to address and put them at ease, do so. Think about how you will approach that new manager and your colleagues, though. But just be mindful that you don't have to share. You don't feel obliged that you have to share or discuss at that point if you feel really uncomfortable and you're not quite ready. Again, it will come down to your own personal choice and decision on this matter. So let's go to the next slide, Toby. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit at positive psychology. Has anyone ever heard of framing and reframing? You know, often the way that we choose how to look or frame a situation, or even maybe an adverse challenge, can really make a powerful impact. If you frame an adverse situation with a positive narrative, it can have lots of meaningful results. Changing the memory from negative to positive is very, very powerful. It supports better experiences and it can increase your chances of success. So we want to get into a positive mindset, but we also want to look at our framing. Again, it comes back to that self-speak. So here's just a couple of tips. You can reframe a past story to suit the present. Has anyone ever used reflection or hindsight? They've looked back and they've thought, you know, looking back, I think I would do this differently. It's a very, very powerful tool to use, and we're going to show you an example after this. What about projecting positivity by visualizing your future? Imagine you're already in the job, you're doing it, you're thriving, you're really, really successful. Imagining your future and what that looks like can be a very, very, very powerful tool. So you can turn an adverse situation into a character building one. I'm not too sure if anyone has heard of a growth mindset, but I've provided a link, and there's some really, really, really interesting pieces of information in this section, because this really looks at, you know, it says you do have to have grit, you do have to have resilience. It's okay to fail because you can learn from your failures. So I've provided a link, and I would highly recommend that you check out Growth Mindset. It's a really, really fabulous positive psychology piece. Excuse me, Toby, next slide. Okay, so here's an example. Toby, I'm going to get you to read this out if you don't mind.
I'll take one for the team. So this is an example about positively framing your disability. Because of my hearing loss, I have developed excellent visual skills and used my imagination and deep concentration skills. This is demonstrated in my ability to develop and enhance my skills. For example, in the past, I used spreadsheets to record and log. Now, I have taken further advantage of training and have excelled. I use Excel for complex data information and have become more confident in financial analysts and performance-related forecasts. I deliver results.
Brilliant. So what we can see here is this individual is actually really quite solid with their Excel skills, right? But what they've done is, through their learning, which growth mindset really talks about lifelong learning, we're always learning as we go through life. So not content with their really strong Excel skills, they've actually decided to take up further advantage of training and excel, excuse the pun, even further. And so they are this data queen or king in terms of their ability to be able to produce complex financial analysis results and even be able to do some forecasting. So this is a really powerful way in which you can use, or, you know, reflect on your past and take it into your present, especially around a strength or a skill. Let's go to the next slide, Toby. Do you want to read this one out too?
Go on then. I have cerebral palsy, which affects my walking and speech. My communication has a few challenges. I have learned to work around this by using different words or writing them down. Over time, people tune in to the way I speak, and I use an electric chair for long distance. I understand challenges others face and usually think of ways on how to overcome. I guess you could say I am a problem solver. I know how to find solutions.
Okay, so this is about the overcoming a challenge, but it's, again, it's not that inspiration porn stuff. But what this does is, say, for example, you're in an interview and you are actually demonstrating and showing them that your disability is not an issue here, because you are a problem solver, and here's how you've gone about resolving resolving a challenge that perhaps maybe other people just couldn't fathom. So this does multiple things actually in your interview and can be a really, really powerful tool to use. Be really interested in understanding or getting a sense of what you think of these examples. Do you find this powerful? Is this something that you might use throughout your job search? in particular in this case in your interviewing. So please feel free to get on chat and share with us what you think. Toby, let's go to the next slide though. Okay, the elevator pitch. Anybody ever watch Dragon's Den? Are there any budding entrepreneurs out there? The elevator pitch is that 30, 60, 90-second opportunity for you to basically sell your wares. This is who I am. This is what I can do. This is my value. And this is the value I can offer you. So why not create your own elevator or sales pitch? So you're selling your abilities and your disability. Does that make sense? So this will help. This type of tool can help you explain your disability quickly, effectively. Great for interviews, right, Toby?
Absolutely.
Can be used to educate, debunk myths, and even sell your strengths. Here's a little quick strategy or structure or approach you can take. First of all, what your disability is. 2 lines, this will educate. Point 2, how does your disability affect you? Really powerful, because this is informing. Point 3, what your disability isn't. This will debunk and demystify. Some people have assumptions around what your disability may or may not be, because really they've no idea. And you're there to be your own self-advocate. Point 4, advantages of your disability, your strengths and your skills. We always want to come back to our talents, our strengths and our skills, right, Toby? Your needs, point 5. This comes back to what adjustments do you need if you need them. And it's about having the ability to be articulate and to be able to assert that. So this is a powerful little device that you can actually use in a very, very, very concise and efficient way. Let's look at an example, shall we, Toby? Toby, I'm going to get you to read this one out if you don't mind.
What is dyslexia? Dyslexia is a neurological learning disability. This means my brain is wired to handle information differently from yours. How dyslexia affects me? There are different types of dyslexia. It takes longer for me to produce figures, recalling and rearranging information. Advantages of dyslexia. Spatial reasoning, critical thinking, and creativity makes it easier for me to deliver results. What dyslexia doesn't mean. Dyslexia doesn't make me lazy or dumb. What I need. Being patient goes a long way. Just ask.
Okay, so this is just a really quick and very concise way of being able to share what is dyslexia. You know, and by the way, there are many different types of dyslexia. So they are informing how their particular dyslexia affects them. But they're also debunking some myths here, and also at the same time highlighting their advantages. Just because I have dyslexia doesn't mean I'm dumb or lazy, but guess what? I've got these incredible creative skills that helps me deliver results. I really love point 5 because it says, listen, this is what I need. Just be patient, ask me, reach out, because I'm cool with it. Maybe you might learn something along the way too. Okay, so we really love to know, what do you think of the elevator pitch? Is this something that you think that you would use? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, what about designing your own discussion script? You're turning your challenge into an action. And if you do, you want to be solutions focused. You are the problem solver. Here's the challenge and I can overcome it. Again, you want to refer it back to the job description and your particular skills and talents. If you've identified within the job description a particular challenge that you can overcome, why don't you nail it? Turn your challenge into an action, but stay solutions focused. You want to keep it really positive because you want to demonstrate the transformation. You want to get comfortable and really confident with discussing your disability. Why not find someone that you trust and you can practice with? Toby, I'll let you read out this one.
Everyone has different challenges. I made a decision to use tools such as audiobooks, Dragon software, and assistive tech. I request information in bullet points. I ask for extended deadlines. I manage the challenges, and although dyslexia isn't something I can fix, I work around it. I embrace it for the creativity it gives me.
Fabulous. So this person is tackling the challenge straight on. And they are giving examples of, it's not a problem for me because here's what I've put in place, here's what I've implemented. And by the way, I've used assistive tech to help me, access to work. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So why not highlight the business benefits? Know your rights. So this is really powerful. Highlight the business benefits to an employer or to a recruiter. So why not avoid, I am bipolar, I'm going to need lots of adjustments. Try to rephrase it with stronger, powerful language. I am bipolar, it means I'm creative, resilient, and offer innovative solutions outside of the box that few other people can. If anyone's familiar with, or maybe not, there's a great formula you can use called PAR, P-A-R. It stands for problem, action, result. And you can very, very, very succinctly provide a powerful example by explaining what the challenge is, what action or role you played, and what was the result of that. For anybody who's interested in using this formula, please go to the Hive and have a look at our CV section, because we've written a very powerful article on this. PAR can be used in your covering letter. PAR can be used in your interview or even in your application form. It can also be used in your CV in a much more stripped down way. Here's another example. Avoid, I'm afraid I'm going to need. Why not rephrase it with my, highlight what adjustment it is that you need, will support me thrive by, and give an actual example. So you're leading the way, you're being your own self-advocate here, okay? And here we go. Why not add in, an access to work covers 80% of approved costs of up to 10,000. Because you know what, guys, lots of employers still don't know about access to work, and even they do not know that, in fact, some of them think that they're actually going to be up for all of the costs. So in this very, very simple example, you're actually helping to educate the employer, you're taking control of the situation, and you're explaining to them what your adjustment is and how it will help you thrive in the world of work. It's a no-brainer, right? Is this something that you think that would be helpful? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, before we finish, a couple of things. It is your responsibility to take control of your story and your narrative. Discuss your need for workplace adjustments. What is it that you need? How will it help you? Don't forget to bring your unique skills and strengths and talents to the table, always. If you want to use your disability and use an example of some of your fabulous skills and talents through that, do so, but make sure it's relevant to the job. Be truthful, determined, confident, and proactive. Just know that you're entitled to have your disability treated confidentially and respectfully at all times. Choose to raise at any time during the recruitment process. Again, that's up to you how you choose to do that. You might decide that you don't wish to, and that's perfectly fine. You also should know that you can be considered, that you must always be considered based on your merit, on your skills and your talent. Also know that you can have respectful questions asked by you from the employer and or the recruiter simply for the purpose of determining your needs. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So for anyone who's interested, please have a look at our Career Hive. It's 24/7, it's accessible to all. There's hundreds of career planning resources on there. We have it broken down into different sections: CV, job search, careers exploration. We even have lots of other areas such as legal, money, financial, gaining qualifications. It's stacked full of really, really fabulous resources. Maybe you're leaning more towards the entrepreneurial. Why not have a look at the starting your business section of the Hive? You can also reach out and find targeted support services in your local area. We think it's really important that you have access to and that you understand who within your community can help support you. So there's a little tool where you simply put in your postcode and a range of service providers will pop up. So it's a very, very, very powerful tool to use. Don't forget, we've got Meet the Employer events, very much like this. This is kind of a Meet the Coach event. where you can meet with employers. They will share with you their latest opportunities, their recruitment, and they will also talk to you about how they're an inclusive employer. It's very, very, very powerful. You get an opportunity to ask them lots of Q&As. So we will have the Financial Times on the 5th of August for anyone who's interested, but we have lots of others. Please go to the events section in the About Us section of the Evenbreak website. I hope that makes sense. Just know that we're going to have lots of other events, lots of other Meeting the Coach events. My next one is going to be how to craft a LinkedIn profile. Do you use LinkedIn? Do you know how to use it effectively? Well, why not register for the webinar on the 17th of August? Okay, next slide. Finally, pertaining to this particular area, I've created some really interesting resources, articles and videos, depending on how you like to learn. Discussing disability, there is lots and lots of stuff on the Hive. Please take a look. One really interesting article, imposter syndrome. Do I even qualify as disabled? Why not check out that powerful article, which has been produced by our fabulous Amy. For anyone who's got dyslexia and you want to understand about reasonable adjustments, because it is kind of a hidden disability, so why not check that out? We get a lot of people asking about financial support if you're disabled, so we have some fabulous tools and resources on the Hive, but this particular one is government based and it takes you directly to a government website. If you're into your positive psychology, Maintaining a Positive Mindset When Living with a Disability is a powerful blog by a fabulous young lady who also gives some additional tips and suggestions on how to remain in that positive cycle. For anyone who really likes her videos, we've got the fabulous Jane Hatton that talks about the myths around employing people with disabilities. Very, very powerful video. And finally, if you like flowers, there's the Dandelion Shift by Laura Whitaker. It's obviously not about flowers, but I'm just going to leave a little mystery around that. Why don't you click on the link or go to TEDx and find out what it is. So that finishes us with our webinar. We have gone over a little bit in time, but I do want you to have the opportunity to ask some questions. So Toby, what are the questions? What's coming up?
We do about 2 or 3 questions, and then hopefully that will cover the majority. So one person have said, you say that you should talk about your disability, but some employers will discriminate and think if you have a physical disability, you can't do that job.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge that individual back and say, so what are you going to do about that? How are you going to demonstrate to them that you can do the job? When are you going to demonstrate that to them? You can only control what you can control. Who you are, how you share your story. So I would really focus on your strengths, your talents, and jump on the opportunity to be able to tell them how you can do the job, and your job's done. Everything else you can't control. Toby, what do you think? How would you handle that?
I completely agree with you, Rose. I think you should take in control, show off your skills, show off your benefits, and prove them wrong. You can actually do that job. Okay,
because we have demonstrated how you can use some strategies to try and demystify and debunk and actually be your own self-advocate, whilst also trying to educate the other person that may be sitting opposite you. So why not have a look at those strategies and try them out and, tell us what you think. Okay, any other questions?
We've got someone who says, for some people who have a hidden disability and is unsure whether their condition meets the definition of disability under the EQA, additional advice on this can be helpful for them to understand their rights and assert them.
Fantastic. I really love that. I totally agree 100%. I think one of the things that we have to get better at as individuals is our own learning, our own knowledge, our own awareness around how our disability affects us, but also understanding, what's out there to support us. What does the Equalities Act actually cover? How can we lean on or use access to work? So we actually have a responsibility to ourselves to be able to, learn and understand, because information is king, right? If you don't know, you don't know. But if you do know, you're armed with all this fabulous information to help make informed decisions that can really actually transform your life and your working world.
Should we do one more last question, Rosa?
One last one.
I had a job within the civil service where I disclosed my hidden disability on application, worked there for many years, and when computers were installed, it was clear I would need additional kit or software to help with seeing the screen. This was not allowed, and I ended up leaving that job due to a lack of support and understanding. Also, in the early days of IT specialists, software were not as easy to source.
Okay. Are we going to respond to that? I mean, that's really open, isn't it? That's disappointing that you felt that you weren't supported. You know, sometimes we have to appeal to the better sense of individuals. You've got a right to be able to appeal and go back and say, no, actually, you need to explain to me why the decision is the way that it is. And you have a right to appeal.
I think that's, I'm afraid we have run out of time, haven't we, Rosa?
I think that we have. We've tried to cover off quite a lot, and we have gone over a little. But I do really want to thank you all very much for your patience on that one. And we hope that you find some strategies or tips here to help you, work through should or shouldn't you. And if you do decide, what's your approach going to be? How are you going to deliver that? And at what point throughout your job search journey? So from Toby and me, we just want to wish you all the very best in that. Please feel free to reach out to us if you are interested in or seeking some career coaching support. Amy, Carney and Tammy and myself will be more than happy to help you with that. So without further ado, I'm going to sign off, but say thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Toby, thank you for your support as ever. Carol and Claire, you've just been fabulous as ever. Thank you all. And thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.
Bye.